And cool. First of all, Andrea, thank you so much for putting this event on. I know collaborating with many different people across many different countries has been, a challenge. And yeah, you've put together something really great. So thank you for giving me the platform. Today, I'm going to be talking about podcasting. I started my podcast probably about 4 years ago, based around the fact that I kept having conversations with mentors and business people, walking away from these conversations going, why didn't I record that? It was insightful, it was motivational. And I was sort of doing it a little bit in terms of I'd walk to my car from having the coffee, doing a selfie video. But it just wasn't getting the message across as well as that initial conversation. So I remember having one conversation with one of these mentors going, geez, I've been thinking about recording these. And he slapped me across the face and said, you should just do it. Stop talking about it. And it was one of the best things that I could have done. Not only have I been able to share stories of other people, but I've been able to start a business off the back end of it, and then also thrived off the conversations that I get. So I'm going to share my screen for a little bit of this, but if you've got any questions throughout, I want to make it as interactive for you guys as possible. So let me just share this and go into present. The other thing we're going to do is look at creating 3 months worth of content by using the podcast as well. So not only will I show you how you can start your podcast today, but also using that to leverage it to get a massive amount of content just from that show. So this is how it started. As I said, that guy over there with the beard was the bloke that said you should stop fooling around and start. And then, over here, I got a little bit more gear. The reason I like to start with this slide, though, is look how terrible the picture is, especially on the left. I wasn't the best videographer when I started. You can see how overexposed this is. Why is this lapel mic not on him? This was the only recording device that I was using. Why are we wearing socks? And even if so, I could have cropped it out of the thing. This imperfect action, though, was the thing that spurred better quality, because this is what it looks like today. So the same person behind this camera or set that set up this also then set this situation up here. So the best thing when it comes to starting your podcast or starting anything is start with imperfect action. Your first episode isn't going to be the best thing in the world, but you're not going to get to episode 60, episode 72, episode 100 without doing those first 1, 2, 3 kind of crummy ones. And that's why I always like to say, look at this as the example over here on the left. If I can start here and then go to here, then anyone can do that. The other part of this is this has been the best part about starting. It hasn't been the reviews, it hasn't been the likes, it hasn't been the vanity metrics that comes off the back of it. It's actually been the relationships that you form as a part of doing this podcast. Every single one of these people and more, I would have loved to put more pictures here, I now consider friends, business colleagues, people that I've either bought their products and services or I've done business with them. Paralympians, so Hannah there, amazing conversation. Best-selling authors here with Stefan. Jim Penman, who's the owner of Australia's largest franchise business in Jim's Mowing. I've been able to do 2 podcasts with him and in email sequences talking back and forth about business. So the ability to spend 45 minutes with people that you otherwise wouldn't have has been an incredible aspect of starting a podcast. And here's some other reasons. So look, becoming an authority in your industry is fantastic. You can amplify your messages via the guests. There's a huge demand with podcasts, people listening to them daily. Growing your business, content, which we're going to talk about a lot today, pure enjoyment, and then also leveraging at the moment TikTok and Instagram Reels with your engaging content. So the first question that I often get asked, and it's exciting, what equipment do I need? Surely now I need a camera, I need all this audio equipment, I need I need all of this stuff, and you can very much overcomplicate it. Again, I want to bring you back to that first slide. It's imperfect action that starts this thing. You start where you're at, but some basic things that I like to tell people is, doing it online is probably the best way that you can do it. Now, in terms of a microphone, the microphone that you're listening to right now is something that I recommend. It's fairly inexpensive, about 135 Australian bucks to get this microphone. It can really get you going in terms of a starting point. If you've got a webcam, you can start there. For me, I've set up a DSLR camera, and that's the thing. Incrementally, I've upgraded my equipment, but I didn't start there. Softbox lighting. Don't underestimate lighting when it comes to videoing your content. It's incredible what happens if you spend $70 and get decent lighting equipment. These subtle changes are things that people, again, go back to. I'll go back to actually those photos. So this scene isn't lighted correctly. There's no softbox lighting. In fact, we've made a mistake here by pointing the camera directly into the light source, which has overexposed it. But then what's made these images a lot better has actually been the softbox light. So that's something that's really important to have. You can go for a boom arm, which again, this is what I've got here, or stands as well. But the biggest thing here is you shouldn't overcomplicate this process. Go and purchase, this microphone. Go and get something that's really simple, that's going to sound good. If you're in person, so you can get Lapel Microphones. They're really, really good quality audio sources. You can use a mobile phone, a tripod, and again, softbox lighting if you must. But the biggest thing that I want to express here is, when you're looking at equipment for your show, you can look at $500 microphones, $1,000 microphones, and then get disheartened by it. No, you should start with a budget that you're comfortable with and get going and incrementally improve from there. One of the other things, how do I even name my show? So this is, again, something that stops people, and it's a real shame, because they start thinking about the name of the podcast for 3 months without editing or presenting or even setting up interviews. Now, I've got a pretty quick formula in how you can actually name your show. So you want something that grabs attention, something that speaks directly to what the show is about. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they're really tempted to call the podcast their name. So it's like John's show or John's Experts podcast. That doesn't really give me an insight into the show. And if I'm John and I don't have a personal brand yet, then it doesn't create a reason for me to click on it. Whereas if I'm John and I'm wanting to do an email marketing podcast, maybe I call the name Email Hacks, or unknown email, something like that. I should have come up with a better name. That's just off the top of my head. It also should be something that's searchable and easy to remember. I first named my show, I made this mistake. It was Been Talking with Undeniably the Best. Now, Been Talking, which is the logo there underneath, people would spell that incorrectly. So they'd spell it B-E-E-N or B-E-A-N space, which meant that when people were searching for the podcast, it wouldn't even show up. So I changed mine to The Experts Blueprint. Again, that shows you a little bit more. And when people were searching that, it actually came up. So really, really important. So people they care about that problem, that 2 to 4 words. These are the things to keep in mind when you're naming the show to really grab attention. The biggest tip here as well is, if you think you've got a really good name, actually go and search for it in iTunes, search for it in Spotify. If somebody else has that podcast name, do a different show, because again, it's the searchability factor. You don't want to be telling people about your show and then you go, oh, it's the cover art that is this one down and that one. Like, again, it comes back to that searchability. So many people name a show and they think it's great, and they go along the process of really loving this name, and then someone else has that, they've claimed it already, or there's 2 or 3, 5, even I've seen 10 shows that have the same name. You don't want to do that. So really make sure your name isn't taken. Cover art is another thing to really consider. This is, along with your name, it's going to be the other thing people use to decide if they're going to click on your show or not. When you're producing artwork, again, it's something that needs to stand out and be interesting. Those are the pixel sizes there as well. You don't want anything that's, less than that or slightly off. Say you do 3000 by 2508. Just the way that iTunes and Spotify is designed, you don't want to go outside of that. Really, you'd like to find a good designer here, someone who understands how they can create something that will get a good first impression on your show. It's something that you really, it makes or breaks a lot of shows. I've picked shows based on the cover art. The phrase, you don't judge a book by its cover, people really do judge the podcast by the cover art. So that's the thing. One of the best things I've told people to do is don't be scared to even have multiple options when it comes to this. It's one of the best things you can do actually in the pre-launch to your show is you can put this out on Instagram stories, Snapchat. You can get people to actually vote on which cover that they find is the most interesting. That will actually create a little bit of buzz around your content. So hopefully that, it's a really good idea. I've seen that work quite well. Here's an example of some covers. Now, maybe in the comments here, this might be a little bit of fun just for some interaction. There's two covers here that are really good, and then there's two that are kind of not following some rules. Do you want to guess? I'll give you maybe a couple of minutes to kind of guess which ones you think are the best, or the ones to kind of go with in terms of guidelines. I'll kind of give you a minute if someone wants to put something in the chat.
Let's encourage them. So please, Rohan, Simfong, Wisdom, Sabrina, and Carrie, if you know which one is a good one, please just type it in the comments.
Maybe Rohan, if you can even unmute if you. Oh yeah, Ask Men's Health. Yep. Cool. All right, you're actually correct. So the reason that Ask Men's Health is good at is a couple of reasons. One, the color pops out really, really well. That's something that when I'm scrolling through, it'll get my attention. The name also, it completely makes sense. I know that this show, it's going to be about men's health. So if I'm a male and I'm interested in health, I'm probably going to be interested in clicking on this. The two that aren't so good are actually the two on the left. Now, there's nothing wrong with the images. They're great. Nothing wrong with that. It's kind of a debate though, in terms of there's a lot of space on that cover. Again, if you're only working with a small pixel size, you're sort of using a lot of real estate on, the microphone and the person. But the thing that's the worst in this is actually where the positioning of the title is. You can see that the title of the show is in the bottom 15% of this cover art. Now, the problem with that is on iTunes, when they're playing that through, that actually gets cut off. And algorithm-wise, iTunes really doesn't like that. So these podcast covers, if they don't change anything about that, will be getting penalized, versus these two where the title is actually above. So it's amazing how little things like that people don't know about. They'll just go, hey, we want, two pictures of us and it looks great with the title down the bottom here. That's something that really you need to take into account when you're looking at your cover, is just bring that title up a little bit. And you're going to be a little bit more compliant when it comes to that. Thanks for your contribution there, Rowan. I appreciate it. Cool. So again, this is really funny because we've got a name for our show now. We've got a cover art. Well, what can we do? And this is where we sometimes get a little bit scared. Maybe imposter syndrome sets in. And often people will get a cover art designed and a name all set, and they might, come up with different ideas for shows and never record. So the best thing you can do to actually get started is I'm going to really make this simple. If you can open a Zoom link, if you can send that Zoom link and an invite to somebody, and you can hit the record button, congratulations, you've got a podcast. Congratulations, you've set up, you've done a few interviews. That's really, I know that might sound a little bit forced and blunt, but that's the best way, is to just do 3-5 interviews and then you get going. So that's sort of the theory aspect of what I was going to talk about. Now I want to get into the best part about having a podcast. If you think about the people that are showing up on your news feeds on a consistent and daily basis, you've probably even gone to their seminars, you've bought their products, you've gone to different things or bought their books, mainly because you've seen 5 videos, 3 images, or 2 blog posts that really resonated with you. Each one of these images, you've probably seen these people on your news feeds. All of this stuff is taken from a podcast directly. What they're doing is they're creating content at scale, and they're doing that, for a reason. So if we know that content specifically works to get attention, then why aren't we doing it? Well, it's because we get nervous. We might forget our lines. We might waste too much time planning out stuff. Or finally, maybe we get something correct and the phone rings. So we've forgotten to put it on flight mode. I know I've done that plenty of times. So all of that is a stress, but then we got to edit it. And, so all of a sudden 3 hours has gone by and we've only made 1 video. But by having a podcast, it's such a more easier and efficient way to actually get content. So wouldn't it be great if we could just sit down and talk about our subject matter with someone else and have a conversation to get a whole bunch of content out of it? So essentially, this is one episode that I did here with Stefan. We found about 18 separate clips just from a 30-minute conversation where he was saying incredible stuff. This was not really pre-planned. He's already an expert in his field. He's written 3 books. We sat down and just said, hey, the broad topic is networking. So we're going to talk about networking. And within this, we created, at least, 17 or 18 bits of content. He didn't have to think about content for another month, let alone 2 months by the time that we've done this thing. So it was just amazing leverage of time by doing this process. And then the other thing that you can really do is create images too. So not only do we have those 17 or 18 videos, but you might say something in that's really quotable. So each one of these is ones that I've done, but I've said these things in different podcast episodes that I've done. A year from now, you'll be glad you started today. Ideas are great, but they mean nothing without execution. All of this stuff has come out of me in conversation. So that's the biggest thing. Is it doesn't matter if 100,000 people are listening to your podcast or 2. It's actually the content that's the best thing that you can get out of it, especially for your business and from a marketing point of view. That's really the most powerful reason. So yeah, now you know how you can sort of set that up. Hopefully you can then, use this as the biggest leverage to do that. That's pretty much all from me today. I really want to actually give more time for you guys to ask questions that you've got about podcasting and video production. If you want to reach out to me, I will put my counter link in the chat in a second. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen now just so I can hand over to you guys. I'm more than happy for you to unmute and ask me the question. But yeah, thank you for spending the time with me.